All right, so this is the simulation lab. In here, we've got a bypass system that we need to know how it operates. So still, you've got the medical utility columns in here. There are 3 medical utility columns. All of the gas and vacuum that are coming to these utility columns are going to come through the ceiling. I'm going to try to be pretty brief for this because you've got some literature that shows you exactly how this operates in here also. But the battery on my phone's getting ready to die, so I've got to hurry up. In the control room, which is where they've got the computers and everything in here, and I apologize, it is a little blurry. I'll see if I can fix that a little bit. It might help a little bit, but nonetheless, in the control room, we've got one K cylinder. That K cylinder is set up, and you can tell that it is off right now. That valve is in the up position. That's the way it needs to be. So all the time, unless we're in here, unless we come in here and bring a ventilator in here or something like that, you've got air flow meters, you've got oxygen flow meters, but the difference in here is we've bypassed the oxygen system, so the air compressor in that room there is now supplying air to both the medical air outlet and the oxygen outlet. So the only time true 100% oxygen is coming out of these lines in the oxygen outlets is going to be when we come in here and turn on the bypass system, so forth, or turn off the bypass system and run 100% oxygen through it. So right now, as is, it's air that's coming out of the oxygen outlet and the air outlet. So the first thing we have to do is when we're ready to come in here and hook our stuff up is going to be, we need to come into this room, which somebody will have to have a key to it, and hopefully an instructor will have it. You'll come in here and we'll have to move, turn these valves on the back wall. This is the air compressor for in here. This is the vacuum pump for in here. So they work exactly the same way as the other ones does in the other room that we had just spent some time talking about. So the first thing you'll need to do is come in here and turn this valve to the straight up position, turn this valve down. So the valve on the right needs to be pointing down, the valve on the left needs to be pointing up. So when we come in here and we do this, we'll notice this is your set of zone valves. So if you pull this ring here, it will expose the zone valves behind here. There's going to be one for oxygen, there's going to be one for air, there's going to be one for vacuum. And in the video it might look like these things are freaking out and changing ever so often, but they're stationary, as are. I mean, I'm looking at them, they're not moving, but for whatever reason on my screen they seem to be moving a good bit. So you got your medical zone valves. We've gone in, we've basically turned off the air compressor. So now what we need to do is we need to come in here and bleed the oxygen lines, because the oxygen lines right now are full of air. So if I turn that on as loud as it'll go, you'll notice that the pressure is dropping. So it's going from, it was like 46 or 48 when we started. Now it's going to drop, and there is a silence button on this thing here. You can mute those alarms if you like by pressing that button inside of this cutout here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn another one on to expedite the process, another oxygen flow meter to expedite the process of oxygen coming out of those. So I'll basically turn this on until I hear nothing else coming out of them. And it may take, I don't know, a minute or so for that to happen. The pressure's dropping already. We can see that on the digital readout on this screen over here. It's dropping down to 6 psi now. It says low. So basically now all I'm going to do is wait until I hear nothing else coming out of these flow meters. And the ball, you can see, is dropping on that flow meter. It's dropping steadily all the way to 0. So there is nothing else coming out of that flow meter. So I'm going to turn it all the way to the right to its off position. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn this other flow meter off. So now basically what we've done is we've bled the air out of those lines by turning off those valves in that other room, to allow us to be able to get the air that was trapped from point A, which is the compressor, to point B, which is the oxygen outlets over here. So now we've bled those lines and air's out of them. So we'll go back into the control room and we'll turn on the oxygen. The oxygen is going to be hooked up to a K cylinder, so we're going to turn this valve all the way to the left, Turn that all the way back, all the way to the left, then back a quarter turn to the right. With this valve standing in the upright position, basically what that's going to do is allow oxygen flow to go out to the oxygen columns. So you'll see now that we're reading about 1500 psi on that gauge, which is your cylinder pressure gauge right here. Line pressure gauge is 50 psi because it's measuring it before it gets to here. So technically the line pressure out here is still going to be reading low. It's still reading low because we've not charged the lines with oxygen yet. So let's go ahead and charge the lines with oxygen, and we should see that we get back up to about 50 psi. So to charge those lines, we've turned this cylinder on. Now all we need to do is push this valve down. So we've pushed that valve down. We come back out here, and we see that we're about 44 psi. I can go in here because we need to be relatively close to 50. I can come in here to this and see what we're looking. So we're close to 50 here. I'm going to take this T-screw and I'm just turn it a little bit more to the right to see if we can get a little bit more pressure in the lines, and we should be able to. So now we're at 52. So that's going to be okay for what we're at, 52, 53 psi. You can be plus or minus like 4 or 5. That's okay. So now when I turn this on, it's 100% oxygen through this system. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the system off. Let's go back into this room and we will turn the cylinder off. We're going to turn the cylinder off all the way to the right. This one's a little tougher to get to than the ones in our lab, but we'll turn that off. You'll notice that the cylinder pressure dropped. Line pressure stays the same because there's still gas trapped. We're not going to pull this valve up yet because we want to make sure that all the oxygen gets bled out of here. So we'll go back out here to the oxygen flow meters. We're going to turn the oxygen wide open. That way we can bleed the oxygen out of that line. I'm going to go over here and turn another oxygen flow meter on to expedite the process. You'll probably hear that thing alarm again here shortly. It is alarming. So now there's oxygen coming out of those, not air, because we had charged it up. But we're bleeding the oxygen out of lines because we're getting ready to turn the bypass system back on so that it'll be air coming out of them again. So now we'll let those run all the way down to 0. We'll let those run all the way to 0. Those balls will begin to drop here shortly. And that one is on its way down. You can see that. I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off. We'll go over here, turn the next one off. Now that these lines have been bled, you're ready to go back into the control room and turn that valve to the upright position. We turn this valve to the upright position to keep air from, essentially if we kept this down, if this was down and somebody never turned this open, that air compressor could potentially transfill this cylinder. Now we would have air instead of oxygen inside the cylinder, and that's no good. You really don't want two different gases mixing. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to pull this up. So that's going to shut off the valve. That's going to shut off gas flow from point A here to point B being the cylinder. So no gas from the air compressor is going to get beyond this valve. Gas will, from the air compressor, will travel up to this valve, but it won't get past this valve into the cylinder. So now we'll go back to the electrical room and we'll look here just to make sure that we're still low. Now we're going to go back in here and reactivate the air compressor, and this air compressor may kick off or dump like it just did. So we're going to turn this valve back to its diagonal position. We're going to turn this back to its pointed right position, and then we'll go back out here to look on the here, and we've got back up to about 47, 48 psi, and this is how we operate the bypass system in W315. And I'm done.